The new poll says a majority of Americans disapprove of President Trump's handling of Iran, and his own team struggles to defend his lies and borrows directly from George W. Bush's playbook. For more on this, it's time for a closer look. You might remember that throughout President Obama's 2 terms, Republicans, including Donald Trump, objected to virtually everything he did on the grounds that he was trampling on the Constitution they supposedly cherished.
I feel very strongly about our Constitution. I'm proud of it. I love it. And I want to go through the Constitution. And that's what we want to do. I mean, we want to bring the Constitution back.
I will give President Obama and the Senate Democrats credit. They believe in principles of big government. They believe in this relentless assault on our constitutional rights.
This president wants to act as if he's a king, as if he's a dictator.
You see, I think we need to return to constitutional government. I think they shredded the Constitution, especially during the health care debate.
Is it time the president just torch the Constitution?
No! Not the pocket Constitution! Melodrama doesn't work as well when you're threatening a reproduction. It's like saying, I'm so mad, I'm gonna flip over my car. You left me no choice. Also, I wish he'd actually done it, because then he'd set off the fire sprinklers at Fox News and Rudy Giuliani would have melted like the Wicked Witch of the West. All you'd see is a suit, some shoes, and his big old Yankee ring. So, the right spent 8 years constantly lecturing the rest of us about the sanctity of the Constitution and obsessively whining that Obama was supposedly shredding it. And then earlier this month, Trump ordered a strike that killed the top Iranian general, Qasem Soleimani, without congressional approval. The Constitution clearly and unequivocally gives Congress, and only Congress, the power to declare war. And yet last week, after the House passed a resolution reining in Trump's war powers, he complained at a rally that it would be inconvenient for him to notify Congress before moving forward with an act of war.
These are split-second decisions. You have to make a decision. So they don't want me to make that decision. They want me to call up, maybe go over there, let me go over to Congress, or come on over to the White House, let's talk about it. When can you make it? Well, I won't be able to make it today, sir. How about, let's say, in a couple of days? Oh, sure, come on over. We had to make a decision. We didn't have time to call up Nancy, who was not operating with a full deck.
She's not operating with a full deck. You're operating with a pair of deuces in that card that has the rules on it. So Trump circumvented Congress to launch a strike on an official of a foreign government, a decision that has been deeply unpopular with the American people. According to a new poll out this week, a majority of Americans disapprove of Trump's handling of Iran and say they feel less safe as a result. So to try to justify the attack, Trump's team has claimed that Soleimani posed an imminent threat and that they had to stop it, although Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has been incredibly cagey about that.
President Trump says that General Soleimani was planning a, quote, imminent attack. What was the plan? Who were the targets, and how soon?
There's things we simply cannot make public about what it is we knew at that time and what, in fact, we know today about the continuing activity.
So was the justification in that he's been this destabilizing force in the region for so long, or was the justification this imminent threat?
Chuck, it's never one thing. There is no doubt that there were a series of imminent attacks that were being plotted by Qasem Soleimani. We don't know precisely when, and we don't know precisely where, but it was real.
When you say the attacks were imminent, how imminent were they? Were we talking about days? Were we talking about weeks?
If you're an American in the region, days and weeks, this is not something that's relevant.
These guys claim there's an imminent attack, and then when you ask them for specifics, suddenly they turn into characters in a French film. Days, weeks, what is the difference? Weeks are days, days are weeks. What matters is love, no? Je suis Pompeo. C'est vrai? Then the Trump administration... Then the Trump administration sent military briefers to Congress to try to convince them that the threat was real, but that only made things worse, with members of both parties coming away from the briefing furious and unsatisfied.
I had hoped and expected to receive more information outlining the legal, factual, and moral justification for the attack. was left somewhat unsatisfied.
There was no specific information given to us of a specific attack, and none of it was overwhelming that X was going to happen.
My reaction to this briefing was it was sophomoric and utterly unconvincing. I was, well, utterly unpersuaded about any evidence about the imminence of a threat that was new or compelling.
We did not get information inside that briefing that there was a specific imminent threat. I think it is likely because it doesn't exist.
Of course it doesn't exist. If Donald Trump says, trust me, the thing exists, it definitely does not exist. He's like a magician who says he's gonna pull a rabbit out of his hat, looks down, realizes the rabbit chewed through the hat and escaped, and says, trust me, the rabbit's there. So because no one believed him, Trump decided to do his usual routine of making even more outlandish lies, changing his story multiple times within the span of just a few days.
We did it because they were looking to blow up our embassy.
President, Mr. President.
Blow up the embassy in Baghdad. Can you provide more details on what that plot was?
No, I think it was obvious. And he had more than that particular embassy in mind. He was looking very seriously at our embassies and not just the embassy in Baghdad.
Don't the American people have a right to know what specifically was targeted without revealing methods and sources?
Well, I don't think so, but we will tell you that probably it was going to be the embassy in Baghdad.
Did they have large-scale attacks planned for other embassies? And if those were planned, why can't we reveal that to the American people? Wouldn't that help your case?
I can reveal that I believe it would have been 4 embassies.
In the span of 2 days, he went from not talking about embassies at all to saying it was 1 embassy, to saying it was multiple embassies, to saying it was 4 embassies. I know Trump is a bad liar, but even for him, it's obvious he's making stuff up off the top of his head. What if it was 4 embassies? Is that a number where you would all leave me alone? What if they were embassy suites? I mean, that would be bad, right? That would be a bad thing. In fact, Trump's lies have spun so far out of control that even his own Defense Secretary, Mark Esper, had a hard time defending them this weekend when he made the rounds on the Sunday shows.
Many members of Congress from both parties have said that none of the briefings mentioned threats to 4 U.S. embassies. Why is President Trump telling this to Fox News, but the administration is not briefing Congress on this threat of 4 embassies, unless there was actually no specific intelligence that there was a threat to 4 embassies?
The president never said there was specific intelligence. What the president said was he believed that it probably and could have been attacks against additional embassies. The president didn't say there was a tangible, he didn't cite a specific piece of evidence. What he said is he believed.
Are you saying there wasn't one?
I didn't see one with regard to 4 embassies.
You're the Secretary of Defense. If it's real, why wouldn't you have seen it? You think Donald Trump has his own top secret intelligence he's not sharing with anyone until he blurts it out on Fox News? You think he's out there parachuting into the Iraqi desert with night vision goggles, collecting intel on his own? Bad news, guys. Everything's green. Now, if you're getting a feeling of deja vu at this point, it's because we've been through this before. In the run-up to the Iraq War in 2002 and 2003, the Bush administration repeatedly lied about the intelligence they used to justify that war in eerily similar ways. They claimed definitively that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction and that he had ties to the terrorists who carried out 9/11. They manipulated intelligence and concocted all kinds of lies about that intelligence to justify an immoral and catastrophic war that destabilized the region and the world. And they were adamant and unequivocal about it. Of course, in George W. Bush's case, he couldn't always keep his talking points straight.
There is no doubt that Saddam Hussein now has weapons of mass destruction. There is no doubt that he is amassing them to use against our friends, against our allies, and against us.
No terrorist state poses a greater or more immediate threat to the security of our people and the stability of the world than the regime of Saddam Hussein in Iraq.
There's a lot of talk about Iraq on our TV screens, and there should be, because we're trying to figure out how best to make the world a peaceful place. There's an old saying in Tennessee, I know it's in Texas, probably in Tennessee, that says, "Fool me once, shame on you." If fool me, we can't get fooled again.
That's how they say it in Texas? There's an old saying in Texas, give a man a fish and now That man has a fish. And he can eat that fish. Or he can keep it as a pet. What I'm saying is, Saddam Hussein is stockpiling weapons of mass destruction. Remember when we thought we could never elect a dumber president than George W. Bush? And then yesterday, our current president tweeted about impeachment and said, "Hose Republicans." Voted 195-0 against it. Well, I mean, I guess we can't expect the real estate developer to be able to spell the word house. Also, he lives in the most famous house in the world, and because none of his aides will ever tell him he's wrong, they're gonna have to change all the signs now. And then in his rally last week, Trump could barely get through the standard end of his stump speech without sounding like he just downed a bottle of Novocaine.
We will make America wealthy again. We will make America strong again.
Did he just do a keg stand? If your friends started talking like that, you'd rush them to the hospital to have their stomach bumped. He sounds like he just got knocked out in the first round by Ronda Rousey. Donald, don't get up. I can do it. I'm feeling strong again. And I think even Trump knows on some level that he can't paper over his lies with charm because he doesn't have any. In fact, he seemed to admit as much in this brief flash of self-awareness at his rally last week.
The radical Democrats have never been more extreme than they are right now. They are stone cold crazy. You know, it's interesting, as I'm saying this stuff, you know, they want crime, they want chaos. I'm saying all this stuff, and then I say, gee, now I sort of understand why they hate me, right?
Wow, it's like he just had a breakthrough in therapy. He should have had a psychiatrist on stage next to him saying, expand on that. Anyway, the point is, the Bush administration manipulated the intelligence lie and insisted that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction and ties to the terrorists who carried out 9/11. And just as we've seen with Trump, Pompeo, and Esper, even when Bush officials admitted there was uncertainty and disagreement about the intelligence, they used ominous language to cow people who dared to question them into backing down.
You will get different estimates about precisely how close he is. We do know that he is actively pursuing a nuclear weapon. There will always be some uncertainty about how quickly he can acquire a nuclear weapon, but we don't want the smoking gun to be a mushroom cloud.
We cannot wait for the final proof, the smoking gun that could come in the form of a mushroom cloud.
Remember that line? So many of the most powerful people in our most powerful institutions went along with that line, though it was obviously insane. It's like if your husband said, I think I have a UTI, and you were like, no, you don't. And he was like, okay, well, I guess we'll find out when my penis falls off. Of course, it turns out there was neither a mushroom cloud nor a smoking gun, or as Trump has repeatedly called it, a smocking gun. That's probably why Trump's speechwriters have never even bothered to write a line like that for him, because they know he'd never be able to pronounce the words. We don't want the smoking gun to be a mushroom pizza. That is something that cannot be
tolerated.
We've been through this before. A lawless administration lying to justify a potentially disastrous and illegal act of war. Trump pulled back from the brink last week, but it's very possible he could do this all over again, which means Congress must use its power to stop him. Because, as they say in Texas,
You can't get fooled again.
this has been a closer look.